am joined now by famous UNT alumnus and now a Cowboys reporter and producer. Kyle Youmans and a good friend. It is good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, it's fun, man. Excited to kind of talk again, and you're doing incredible stuff. I don't know about famous yet. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but
in my eyes,
having fun doing what I'm doing, though.
All right, so I wanted to start off, obviously, we're practicing social distancing because of coronavirus. So where were you when that last Mavs game happened, when the entire NBA stopped, the entire sports world stopped? Where were you?
So I was on air on ESPN Plus for the Conference USA basketball tournament. So the crazy part about it is we had just finished our third game of 4 that day. And earlier in the day, we had seen the postponements kind of starting to rain down from the English Premier League and different soccer leagues, and baseball was even thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, Rudy Gobert tested positive, and they halted the Oklahoma City and Utah Jazz game. And then the news came down after that third game that this season had been suspended. And so we were all like, wow, that's crazy. We couldn't even imagine of that kind of happening. And then all of a sudden, conference tournaments started saying, "Oh, we're going to have it without the fans." Or the NCAA tournament came out and said it first: "Is we're going to have the NCAA tournament without fans at all." And then it was, "Oh, now the conference tournaments are doing that as well." And then they made the announcement on our court saying fans are no longer allowed at the Conference USA basketball championships. And so that was a little bit eerie for sure, because you were kind of like, "Oh, things are starting to fall. The dominoes are starting to kind of take place here." And then we came back the next day, and we're about to start a game. I had an 11 a.m. tip-off that next day, and we were like, the teams were leaving the court or just about to leave the court and then come back on. The band was already in the background, and then the fans, of course, were not there except for families that were permitted. So even with all of that being said, we were still ready to go to play those games that day. All of a sudden, we've got a tap on the shoulder, us being the ESPN telecast, and we got a tap on the shoulder, and they said, "Hey, we just nixed the tournament. It's all done. Everybody's going home." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is wild." People started cutting up the logos on the court and kind of taking everything down, breaking it down. I mean, it was down by almost 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Everything was already stripped, which was just nuts. But I remember the most eerie part about it is everyone had already left. There weren't but 5 or 6 people on the floor, and a Louisiana Tech band was playing into an empty stadium, and it was their school song, which already is one of the most somber-sounding school songs that you could potentially hear. It was just very soft and fluid and very, very somber already, and then it kind of added to the moment. And that's the lasting impact, is that Louisiana Tech's band was playing into an empty stadium on what was just going to be an incredible weekend. Even day one was nuts, the kind of games that were had, and then March Madness just came to a close.
Yeah, and look, I said yesterday to Nick and Jackson that, I was at the Mavs game, the last one, and you see Boban going crazy, and then when all the media guys found out, it was like watching a horror movie, because all the fans were just still going crazy. It's like nothing was going on. Then once you go to the post press conference, Mark Cuban comes and gives his spiel, and then all of a sudden, right when we leave, there are posters everywhere saying no Mavs games for the rest of the season. We were just like, and it was insane. And then all of a sudden, nobody was there anymore, and it was really it's like you said, it was eerie, because I was supposed to cover the UNT's basketball the day after, but there was no conference, so it was crazy to see all that happening. And look, now we're practicing social distancing. There's no sports. All major sports are canceled. How have you been? How have you been passing time? How have you been trying to fill up the day with nothing to do, really?
Well, luckily for me, we've got some incredible IT professionals and just professionals in general with the Cowboys that have allowed us to kind of go on as normal. I mean, I have 3 shows a week. I'm on Talking Cowboys, the Draft Show, and then the Blitz every week. And so I've kind of had to build my own little home studio to accommodate the fact that I am on air still, and I'm still in a very potent part of my career where I'm kind of on an incline trying to get to a couple positions that are open and still kind of trying to make a name for myself. And so I'm not taking any of this lightly in like a vacation by any means. So I'm not having a ton of trouble filling up a day. I watch a lot more film than I think I had previously. And now I had watched a lot of film, but in a normal work day where I'm up at the Star until 5 or 6, I could probably only get through 2 or 3 draft prospects and kind of break down their film and really feel good about how I view and summarize them. Now I can get through 5 or 6 of those guys in a day and really feel good about it. So I'm doing a lot of writing as well, a lot of reading too, just kind of getting ready for the draft, and then also even past the draft and into what is a crazy NFL offseason already. Just the fact that now the draft's going to be all virtual, and there's going to be all of these different meetings and whatnot that are all via Zoom like you and I are talking right now. So in terms of filling the day, it hasn't been at least a challenge for me yet. But, man, I do see the trouble for a lot of the people that do cover sports out there. It's tough. It's tough to try and find time in the day. Now, I have gotten into running a little bit, so that's been fun. I ran 30 miles last week, which if anybody knows me, that's not a normal thing for me. I'm not a runner. So the fact that I even had time to do that is really nice for me. And so I'm trying to shed some weight, try and get back in shape while I have no excuses around it. So.
All right, and we're definitely going to talk Cowboys, but real quick, I want to go back to UNT. How did you feel about UNT's the basketball season before it sadly ended? How did you feel about the team overall?
It was special. I mean, the fact that you had a chance to go to the NCAA tournament, you're the top seed in the conference, regular season champions. So they're going to still raise a banner, and there's going to be a banner in the Super Pit for the rest of time, which is great. But it's still a big what if season. A lot of people kind of wrote it off as a foregone conclusion that they were going to the NCAA tournament. They still had to get 3 wins. They really did. But even though they had the bye in the first round of the Conference USA title or the championships, it wasn't a foregone conclusion. Louisiana Tech's a really good team. UTSA was solid. Western Kentucky was an incredible team. Like, there are these definite roadblocks that are going to be up against UNT. I even thought Florida Atlantic, the team that they were going to play in that quarterfinal matchup, I thought that they were a sleeper team in the whole thing. So I still looked at it as not a foregone conclusion that they were going dancing, but you'll never know. That's the thing is they never really got a chance to do that. They never had a chance to see their name scroll across the screen on the NCAA selection show, a chance to see a couple videos of them, positive or not, in the one shining moment at the end of it all. And you feel for all those seniors. You feel for not only North Texas, but think about Kansas and Kentucky and Baylor. I mean, I grew up in Waco as a Baylor fan, and this is the best Baylor basketball team I've ever seen. I mean, this was a number 1 team for more than 10 weeks in the regular season. And, yeah, they kind of pitter-pattered down the stretch, but still had what it took to take a legitimate shot at making a run to the Final Four for the first time since the 1950s. So not only do I feel bad about North Texas and those seniors overall, but I feel bad about really any of those winter sports athletes that never got a chance to either win a title or win a championship. At least the confetti fell for North Texas, but it's still tough to see overall.
Yeah, the confetti fell because of all the cancellations, but the NCAA decided to not release the bracket, and a lot of UNT fans were very upset about that. How did you feel when they decided to not release it? Do you think they should have? Do you think they should have released the bracket?
As a fan, I 100% wanted them to release a bracket, just solely based on the fact that there had been hours and hours, even years, going into the preparation and the type of work that it involved getting to that tournament. However, before I move on, I would like to say, like I said a minute ago, I would have loved to see North Texas scroll across that screen as a 13 seed or a 12 seed or whatever they would have been, seeing what the matchups would have ultimately looked like moving forward. However, even though it would have been great for recruiting, it would have been great regardless. It's still a big what if. It doesn't change the fact that the tournament did not end up happening. And also, you can talk about all the conferences giving out a quote-unquote automatic bid in terms of each of their conference tournaments. The fact that they were canceled it takes away from the fact that it would have been an automatic bid regardless, unless they just didn't have a tournament overall. So there are teams like, and I'll use Western Kentucky as an example, who would not have made the tournament would they have not won the conference tournament. But they also have a big what if, because in their mind, they were on a revenge tour trying to get back in North Texas for stealing the regular season crown. So I would say that they did the right thing by not ultimately revealing the bracket overall. But as a fan, I would have loved it. As a media member and as a realist, whenever it comes to sports management, I understand why they didn't end up doing it. I think it was a smart move.
Right. And look, as fans, we obviously miss sports right now. We miss UNT sports. Now, when this is over, when we finally get to go back, get to cover games again, do you think that the appreciation for sports will increase? Do you think in attendance for like sports and like Cowboys, even Rangers games, do you think you're going to see attendance increase?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be huge. The fact that you've never had a single moment, really since sports began, that every sport has been put on pause. Sure, you've had lockouts here, you've had disagreements there, you've had strikes here, you've had ultimately a bunch of different things going on in respective sports. However, you've never had sports, at least whenever they're at this type of magnitude, just put on pause. And I think that's why a lot of people, whenever sports do come back, it's going to be a pretty penny, because teams are going to have to spike up the prices to kind of make up some of the financial loss that they've had to stimulate. But at the same time, people are just going to be wanting each and every one of these events badly. I mean, the NFL or the MLB or even the NBA, whichever one comes back first, it's going to be a victory over this virus. It's going to be a victory over this pandemic that has overtaken the world, whether it's the English Premier League or it's a small town soccer league. It doesn't matter. Whatever ends up being reinstated first is going to be that symbolism of, as a human race, we came together, we weathered the storm. Sure, there's a lot of things that are going to be different from here on out, and we sure did lose a lot of people, and that's the sad part about it. But at the same time, it's the first sign of returning to normal and life getting back to reality that we all know and love. So it's going to be huge. And I think the NFL season, even though the NFL hasn't necessarily been really affected other than maybe off-season meetings, I think the NFL is going to blow up. I think it's going to be huge just because people are so clamoring for sports. And normally, whenever you're waiting for football season, you could at least stimulate some of that need with baseball and basketball and some of these other sports. You're not going to have anything almost leading up until football season. So once kickoff comes around, it's going to be unbelievable to see the kind of response and the kind of fandom that comes around it. I think it's going to be a magnitude that we've never seen.
Yeah, and one way football has been affected is that it was announced that the draft will be all virtual, and it was actually reported today that multiple officials and coaches were nervous about them getting hacked. I mean, them getting hacked during the draft. Do you think that this is the right way to go to do a virtual draft? Do you like that the NFL is still trying to go to the draft as much as possible?
Yeah, I think the draft being at the same time is it's fine. That's the thing, is like, it's not ideal because none of this is ideal and it never will be. But I think it's okay to keep the draft where it is. A lot of people are going to say, well, they're not having these meetings. They're having to scout players virtually. They're having to do all of these different things that are making the draft process harder. Well, the draft ultimately is a guessing game anyways. There's no perfect formula in terms of finding these draft keys. Even Hall of Fame GMs and coaches and everybody who has been involved in a draft process have missed on guys previously. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a disadvantage to just not have these things scouted by the course of the off season. But at the same time, it also keeps the window open of having as normal of a season as possible. Because if you back up the draft until May, June, July, you're starting to get into training camps. You're starting to get into mini camps. And I know those are a big question mark at the moment as well. But the fact that you're moving into those time periods and moving into those dates, and then you make these draft picks, then you turn around, all of a sudden they've got to be acclimated immediately. I don't think that's fair for anybody involved. You talk about rookies and their families. There are rookies that are going to be up in Indiana that played for Notre Dame, but originally are from California, but they're going to get drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you're going to go all the way across the country, and you've got to make plans for that.
Right.
You can't do that overnight. And even with an NFL signing bonus, you think about some of these seventh-round guys, they're not making a ton of money. Now, they're making good money compared to the rest of us out there because they're NFL athletes, and they deservedly should. But it's still a big task at hand to try and move across the country for what is going to be seemingly the next couple years of your life. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL does it. I don't know if hackers are going to be an issue. I would assume that whatever companies are around the NFL, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, it doesn't matter. Any of these parks and any of these moving pieces of the logistics are going to be flawless because the NFL is not going to have anything less than that. So I don't know. It'll always be kind of a blemish on what was going to be an incredible draft year. In this class, I feel for them because they were going to ride. It would seem like a couple months ago they were going to ride on a boat across a lake to a casino, get up on top of a stage, and like fireworks were going to go off when they got drafted. Now you're in a room with your family, which is cool, and it's still the dream coming true, but you just don't have the fanfare around.
Yeah, definitely that draft is like your welcome to the NFL moment when you hear the crowd, when you see Roger Goodell. It's been taken away from them, but luckily the draft is still going on, so I commend them, the NFL, for continuing to do that. Now, I love watching the Blitz. I really appreciate it. It's such a great show to watch. And now I watched Dave Hellman, and he was talking about how much Dallas needs a cornerback or defensive tackle or defensive ends. Obviously, I think defense is more important for the Cowboys to draft. I don't think they need to draft defensive tackles because they've been having a lot of signings in the trenches for there. I think they need to focus on cornerbacks. Do you think for that 17th pick they should go after a corner? Because I know we're all talking about the 17th pick. Who should they pick? Who should they pick? Do you think they should go after a corner?
I think corner is the top need for the Cowboys, and there's no doubt about it. Whenever you lose a guy like Byron Jones and then you replace him with Maurice Kennedy, who is a suitable veteran, but he's not Byron Jones. Byron Jones is a top 5 corner in the league, and he got money like it a couple months ago, or a month ago, I guess, almost, with the Dolphins. But with that being said, you take your best player available at 17, and if you don't have a player there that you like, trade out of that pick. Go back down and kind of maneuver your way into a draft that is deep enough on the defensive side of the football that you can kind of fill some of those roles. And just because they've made signings at defensive tackle and even at edge rusher, I mean, you add Aldon Smith last week, who seemingly is going to be reinstated by the NFL. You also have the defensive tackle signings like Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe. Those are great names, but they're also veterans on the back half of their career, and they're big bodies up front. But ultimately, all of the moves that the Cowboys have made this offseason on the defensive side of the football have been depth moves, maybe with the exception of Clinton Dix at the safety spot. You could still add a safety. I think anything is open for the Cowboys. You still need a third wide receiver. You've got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and insert name here. So if the best player at pick 17 is a wide receiver, then pick a wide receiver. If it's a defensive tackle like Javon Kinlaw, I would be ecstatic about that. There are plenty of players at pick 17 that are going to make an impact. Whether it makes your strength stronger or your weaknesses stronger, it doesn't matter. I think, yes, cornerbacks are a need, and it has to be addressed in the draft. I think they're going to double dip at corner. I think there's going to be multiple picks at that position. It just may not be at 17.
Yeah, and then I watched that you did like a package over James Lynch, and it seems that you've taken a liking to him. Do you think he would be a great fit for the Cowboys overall if they should draft him?
I think he'd be a great fit. He's versatile. He can play in a 4-3, can play in a 3-4. He's played outside edge rusher. He can play defensive tackle. He's the definition of a tweener. And the reason why I think that fits is because that's kind of what Mike Nolan wants to do on that defensive side of the football. They haven't committed to having a 4-3 or 3-4, and they talked openly about wanting to have kind of a hybrid, multiple look on that defense. Sure, they're going to have 4 down linemen, and that's kind of the plan moving forward. But I think James Lynch, along with some of the signings they've had, like a Dontari Poe, like Gerald McCoy, and even Aldon Smith, they're all versatile as well. Even DeMarcus Lawrence, who's already on your team, could somehow be an outside edge rusher. Even Jalen Smith as a linebacker could find a way to go downhill. He's better playing downhill anyways. So there's multiple ways you can go about it, and I think James Lynch fits that mold initially. Now, he's not going to be a guy who's going to go day one, maybe not even day two. I expect him to be maybe an early day three guy, fourth or fifth round, a value pick at that position. But this is a guy who was one of the top 10 in the country in sacks, has had production his entire time, and also now he's also been coached by an NFL coaching staff, Matt Rule and Phil Snow, who are both the head coach and defensive coordinators, respectively, in Carolina now.
Right.
Were his head coach and defensive coordinator at Baylor. So I think he's a smart kid. He's an athletic guy. He's not going to run off the page by any means. And he's got some short arms, which is kind of the issue. You want some reach out of a pass rusher, but with the production that he's put up, he's definitely going to be a value pick.
Yeah, and look, this defense is a very fast-paced defense. I think they play best when they're playing their game, when they're playing very fast-paced. They can't afford to be slow. They need to keep up with these fast-paced offenses. Now, speaking of offenses for Cowboys, they seem to be doing great. Obviously, they're still trying to work out a contract with Dak. Amari, although according to Rex Ryan is the biggest disappearing act in the NFL, they signed him. He's locked down. Now, you said they could have another wide receiver option. Now, there are videos popping up of Dak and Dez working out, doing some drills together. Would you like to see a Dez Bryant reunion and for him to wear that star again?
This is another one of those, if I were a fan, kind of answers for sure. Because if I'm a fan, yeah, let's throw up the X. Let's figure out a way to get Dez back. But I don't really put a whole lot of substance into it. I mean, you look at some of the guys that have worked out with Dak over the last couple of weeks, it's the same kind of thing. People are doing the same thing with Lamar Jackson working out with Antonio Brown. Oh, Antonio Brown is potentially going to go to the Ravens. There's no substance in that either. It's just guys working out with guys. Dez Bryant's trying to get back in the league. I think this is a great move on his part because at least it keeps the conversation going, and you have a reputable young quarterback kind of having his back on it. And so I think overall you look at these workouts, and sure, Dez does look better. I'll give him credit from the videos that he was posting working out about a month and a half ago. It's a little bit, he's definitely been improved, but at the same time, I don't know if I put a ton of substance. Lance Lenoir was also in those workouts. Nobody's talking about the Cowboys re-signing Lance Lenoir. There's no talk about that by any means. Ezekiel Elliott was there. That's cool too. They all look good. They all look better than they were. And sure, I hope I hope Dez finds a quarterback and a team that wants him to come play for them. I just don't think it's going to be in Dallas. I really don't.
All right, and now with Dallas, let's do a super early prediction for the season. Where do you see this season going for Dallas? I know every year fans and them always say that this is our year, this is a Super Bowl. I can't tell you how many times my sister every year is like, I feel it, this is our year, and then they proceed to not have their year. Where do you see the Cowboys having this season? Where do you see them?
Yeah, it's almost like an every year thing of, we've got the guys now. And even last year there was some substance behind it.
Absolutely.
You went to an NFC playoff game and you lost to a team that ended up representing the conference in a Super Bowl. So you have some of that to kind of back off of. But going 8-8, there's going to be some pessimism going into this year. Oh, wait, we've got a new head coach. Oh, hey, we've got a new defensive line, plus insert draft picks that we end up making here. It could be one of those other seasons where you're talking yourself into the Cowboys making a run. I think they win the division. I really do. I like Mike McCarthy. I like the additions they've made because all the additions right now, if you look at it on paper and you compare it from 2019 to 2020, 2019 is a better team. However, you've put a safety net underneath you for 2020 without even adding draft picks yet. You're going to add 3 players that could legitimately start because of your first, second, and third day picks, or first round picks, and then all of a sudden you're back in the talent conversation as well. And if any of those guys produce even past the third round, then all of a sudden you're right in the middle of one of the top teams in the league because you've got an elite quarterback, you've got an elite wide receiver, one of the top 2 rushers in the league, top 3 rushers in the league. And then you've got some young talent on offense. You've got a solid offensive line, even with the retirement of Travis Frederick. There's a lot of positives for this Cowboys team. Defense is a big question mark, but I like the signings that they've had. I would say, if we're saying prediction right now, April 7th, 2020, I would say they go, and it's also kind of tough because you don't know if they're going to play 16 or 17 games going into next year because of the CBA and this COVID-19 going on. But if they're going to play, let's just go based off of the past. If they're going to play 16 games in 2020, thanks to the craziness of COVID-19 delaying the 17-game season, I would say they go 10-6, win the division, and they make a nice play in the playoffs, but I don't know where they would even stand in terms of first or second round.
I definitely want to agree with everything you're saying, but I think this feels like a practice here because a new head coach, you have almost an entirely new coaching staff. But at the same time, do you think Jerry will be patient with that? Because Mike McCarthy, I know they're all in a win-now mood, but you got to give Mike McCarthy time to figure out how to play Dak, how to use Amari, how to do all that. I mean, I at least want to give him this year as a practice year, but knowing how Jerry is, with this new signing, with all this new stuff happening, he's in like, yo, we got to win in these next 2 seasons because I'm not getting any younger. I need to see a 6th Lombardi trophy at the Star right now, and all these Cowboy fans, they need to see another ring. So do you think Jerry will be patient with Mike McCarthy?
You know, Shahji, I think there's a difference between patience and transition years. Whenever you're talking to coaching staffs and you're talking to front office personnel, there's no such thing as transition years. There's no time, except maybe when you're past the point of no return and you're probably tanking for a draft pick. There's no time you're going to spend a ton of money on your offensive side of the football. You're going to add all of these free agent pieces, and then you're not expecting to go 16-0 or 17-0. You're trying to win every single game. Sure, there's going to be some patience involved. It's a first-year head coach. There's a learning curve that normally comes with the job. The only difference here is that it's a Super Bowl winning head coach. He's one of just a handful of guys that are still currently coaching that have lifted the Lombardi trophy. And so even though it's been so long since that happened and it's a completely different franchise, you're expecting a lot out of them, I still think there's still a higher expectation, and people should have a high expectation for Mike McCarthy. I mean, you look at how detrimental this coaching staff was in the past and how people kind of dogged the coaching staff. If they're dogging the coaching staff so much in the past, there's no reason that expectation shouldn't be sky high for a new coaching staff involved. Right. So I still think even with it being kind of a year where you look at it and say, okay, I could see them being in a transition year, that's not the mindset going through the Star by any moment. It's hey, we're trying to win championships here. It's the Cowboys standard. You're trying to win a Super Bowl, and if you don't win a Super Bowl, even after 10 years, you lose your job. So there are different things that are going to ultimately be in the thick of things whenever this season comes around. But I think the expectation still should be pretty high.
Yeah, I definitely think Cowboys fans will be more patient, especially with having a decade of Jason Garrett. I think they can handle maybe 2 seasons more if they don't win another ring, because I think Mike McCarthy will need a little bit more time to handle a bunch of these personalities, trying to handle all this, especially with the defensive side, trying to get all that going. Now, okay, one last question before I let you go. They did release the all-decade team for the 2010s. Only 2 Cowboys made it, so it was Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. Do you think there were some big snubs? I know there was no Travis Frederick, no Dez Bryant, and then there was no DeMarcus Ware. Do you think any Cowboys were snubbed significantly where you're like, oh my God, that's egregious. How did they not put this player in?
Not really. I think they got it right. The one that I would maybe argue for would probably be Travis Frederick, because along with Zach Martin and Tyron Smith, this offensive line has been the best offensive line consistently in football over the 2010s. And you start it from whenever Tyron Smith was drafted. So I think you could potentially throw his name in there, but there have been a lot of really good centers in the NFL in the 2010s. Pouncey has been unbelievable, and he's got a Super Bowl appearance. And you've got some different guys there that could be at least over the top in terms of center production. You mentioned Dez Bryant. There have been too many good wide receivers, man. I think there may be some other snubs in there, but I think there have been so many good wide receivers in the NFL. And Dez, the fact that he kind of fizzled out at the end a little bit and didn't last over the entirety of the decade, nor really did his numbers really kind of match at least some of the all-time numbers. Because if you're on an all-decade team, you're most likely, at least in the conversation, for Ken. You're most likely a candidate to be going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think Tyron Smith and I think Zach Martin are on their way to getting gold jackets. They've still got a ways to go. Same thing with a bunch of the players named. But in order to be at least in the all-decade team, I think you at least need to be on the path of getting to a gold jacket. Now, you mentioned one name you didn't mention was Jason Witten. Now,
Yeah.
I think he would have been in the conversation if it wouldn't have been for Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski and kind of the evaluation and kind of the elevation of the tight end position as a receiving threat over the modern course of the NFL over the past decade. If the tight end wasn't as prominent in an NFL offense, I think Jason Witten would have been there because he's a better blocker and he potentially was the best receiving tight end before Gronk and Kelce. And you could even throw like Zach Ertz in there now, but I don't think Ertz has done it as much as Kelce and Gronk did in terms of trying to get to the all-decade team. But I think he would have been at least in that conversation, if not make the team, if the changing of the guard and the modernization of the spread offense, shotgun, tight ends, wide options, whatever, all of that kind of stuff kind of thrown into it, I think Witten would have been there, but I just think Kelce and Gronk deserved it a little more.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Witten because he's probably the best blocking tight end of all time because he's just fantastic.
Yeah, one of them.
Just fantastic what he does. He wasn't a big personality. He just didn't have a lot of flashy plays. He wasn't fast or too athletic. He just, right when he got it, he just made sure he had to catch the ball. That's why they called him Mr. Reliable. That's what they did. But Travis Kelce, I mean, that dude can pop off for an 80-yard touchdown whenever possible. And that's why I understand how good Gronk is also. Dez, I also feel bad for him because, like you said, this is one of the best wide receiver classes we have seen. Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Antonio Brown, the list goes on and on. I think he did lead them in touchdowns for like the longest time. I mean, from 2000 to 2015, it was a debate between, who's the best? Is it Julio or is it Dez? Maybe Antonio Brown. But Dez was in that conversation for the longest time. But I think his injuries finally caught up to him. And him and Dak just didn't click. They did click a little bit in 2016, but for some reason, something just happened. They fizzled out. But it's unfortunate for them. But I do agree Travis Frederick should have been maybe put in that. But props to Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. Those are surefire Hall of Famers there.
Yeah, getting to that point.
All right. I think we're out of time. I want to thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, man. I feel like I'm back being a freshman. I feel like I'm back a freshman again when I was wearing my purple suit and I was on game day for the first time.
Yeah, it's definitely fun for sure. And, of course, love North Texas and keeping up with you guys. Keep killing it over there.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good day. I'll keep watching your shows. I'm excited. Have fun at the draft. That should be fun.
It will be fun. It'll be fun.
All right. Take care, man. Good to see you.
Ready, set,